Jason Cole, who covers this damn league. I'm going to ask him all these questions here. So last 2 days, we've had Jimmy Johnson and Dave Wannstedt on. And we're prepping for Cowboys and Eagles on Sunday. Now, as Jason, Jason, he looks at the Cowboys and he goes, I don't know if I'm taking that person out on a date. I just don't know if I'm doing that, man, because I don't know if I can trust that very much, okay? The 49ers and the Eagles, I pretty much can trust. Let's get to our friend here and talk to our friend here and get his thoughts here. Jason Cole here, Hall of Fame voter, our dear friend, covering National Football League for such a long time. Jason,
you are 100% wrong about that.
Really?
I would go on a date with the Dallas Cowboys at least one time, because that's going to be a ride, baby. That's going to be a ride. Like, you don't know where it's going to end.
Wait, are you taking the Cowboys home after the date?
I have no idea.
Back to her home, or are you letting them find a ride home?
I'm not even sure where we're going to end up. Okay, I have no idea. Okay, I am telling you, we could end up on an airplane to Vegas. Okay, all right. It will be one of the wildest nights of your life. But if you're looking for a long-term commitment, absolutely not.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. Did I just hear Jason Cole compare the Cowboys to a stripper?
No comment. Next question.
Hey, we don't want that on tape. Hey, by the way, I think I've incited a riot. If you go over to my Twitter page, it's a friend of mine who we both know was at, I don't know, I think he was at the complex yesterday, and I went like this. Rumor is that the Cowboys receivers were laughing at the Eagles secondary guys, and it's now an all-out war on Twitter between Eagles and Cowboys right now because
you just threw the grenade in.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know me, I'm the greatest starter in the history of sports talk.
You gotta be. You got it. That's the nature of this beast. You just gotta throw a grenade in. Yep.
What do you got on Sunday, Jace? How do you see this thing playing out? Cowboys and Eagles.
Again, I always come back to, if the teams played 5 times, how many times do you think each one would win? And I think that you say Eagles probably win 4 of them, or 3, like 3.5, something like that, 4 of them. And yeah, the Cowboys can win. They can beat them. They get some turnovers, get some plays. That's not a bunch of slackers. Okay, they got players, right? But if you're talking about over a period of time, brute force, okay, who wins the matchups in the trenches, and then AJ Brown against the corner, the Dallas corner, all those kinds of things that you look at, overwhelmingly you bet on the Eagles to win this game. I just don't know. Like, the Eagles are a team that's kind of playing with their food right now, because they know they're good, right?
Yeah.
So they're playing with Washington. They played with their food a little bit, and then said, okay, it's time to put this game away, right? And so they have that tendency right now. They're a little bit bored, and that's not a great quality, but it happens from time to time. As an athlete, you get tired of going through the motions every once in a while. You want a challenge. And we'll see if this one's enough of a mental challenge for them to say, we're going to thump these guys and show them who's boss. Or are they going to say, well, we're the best team in the league, and whatever, it's the Cowboys. I just don't know what kind of mental state they're going to be in. That's the one. But the Eagles are the better team.
Do you agree, Jason, that it's the bullies on the block in the 49ers and the Eagles, and it's the Lions and Cowboys trying to make a statement? Because the 49ers have a chance to play them in a couple weeks, and the Cowboys also have to show, because after getting killed by Arizona, I mean, if I'm Dallas and I'm coming into a physical matchup, because they almost look alike, the Eagles and the 49ers, you got to prove you can hang with these physical football teams, or you're going to get run off the field.
Yeah, this is part of it. I think that's the identity that the Cowboys want to have. They want to be able to thump teams in the third and fourth quarter. Look, Mike McCarthy dreams of having the kind of running game that the Eagles have. It's not for lack of intention. It's a difference in talent, which is why I said before the trade deadline, if the Cowboys were really smart, they would make an offer on Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the kind of power player. Pollard's a nice player. Don't get me wrong, he's okay. But he's not a thumper. And they want to be able to thump people in their running game, and they don't have that. They have, sort of the offensive line that's still sort of good enough to kind of run games out when they get up a couple of touchdowns. They've done that this year against vastly inferior teams when they've gotten ahead of them, and they've been able to grind out some games. But they can't grind out games when the opponent knows. Like what Philly can do is they can say, "We're going to run the ball." And we're going to run the ball. And you're not going to stop us. And we're just going to control the ball, whether that's a 4-minute drive with, 5 minutes left in the game to kind of ice the game, or whether it's to go get a touchdown. The Eagles can do that. The 49ers, when they're healthy and they have Trent Williams, they can do that. Cowboys, I don't think can do that just yet.
It's a talked about question all the time going into a game like this. And I say this about the Cowboys. You just said too, Jace, when you said, I don't know that. Well, here's something else that I don't know. And I don't know if you subscribe to this as well. Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy. Now, Mike's got a ring. So again, he was a play caller. You got to get credit. People want to give Sirianni credit for getting to the Super Bowl and losing it. You got to give McCarthy credit for going there, being the play caller, and winning it. I get it,
absolutely.
Aaron Rodgers. But don't Dak and Mike have to have a signature win on their resume? Aren't these the elite games you pay $50 million for? Yeah. It's not beating New Orleans, right? It's going on a Sunday in the afternoon in Philly and winning a divisional game like this.
Well, that's a statement that you are ready, that you have taken that next step.
But they never do it.
I'm totally agreeing with you. This is forever the problem with the Cowboys. Okay. The Cowboys get to the point where everybody thinks, oh, the Cowboys are really great. They're 5-2. They're this. They're ready to take over. They're ready to mash. They're ready to this. And they get to a game like this, and they spit the bit. I mean, it's just it's a bad deal. So yeah, they have to get one in order for me to take them seriously as a Super Bowl contender, right? Like I don't take them seriously as a Super Bowl contender. I take them seriously as a playoff team that could get to the Super Bowl if a bunch of things happen, like random things, right? Like they play some teams that have 2 or 3 turnovers in a playoff game, right? All of a sudden that happens. Okay, yeah, I can picture the Cowboys getting to the Super Bowl, but it's not because of their ability to impose their will on a game. It's because of random things that may or may not happen along the way, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I look at how this team has been constructed, the Cowboys, and I was talking to Jimmy 2 days ago about this. Why, when I look, I mean, Jason, Jerry Jones has his name on this roster. Uh-huh. He has had his name on the roster for 27 years. He's never validated himself being a football man. Just because you win in the regular season, aren't games like this also important to him as a football guy? Because I say this to you all the time, and I'll continue. He's never been able to replace what Johnson did for those 5 years in Dallas. Right. When does he validate his own GM's record?
Well, given his age, probably never.
How did you vote him for the Hall of Fame?
Because I think that he's P.T. Barnum.
So you think he's another version of Al Davis?
No, I don't think he's as good a football man as Al Davis.
Okay.
I think he's P.T. Barnum in terms of raising the level and the fame and of the NFL, and he's
and
clever,
the value of the league.
The value of, and I don't value is not one of my high priorities. Don't get me wrong, okay, but when somebody is so good at it, you have to give them respect. The other thing is, look, he did hire Jimmy.
Yep.
right?
Yep.
He was the owner for those 3 championships. He is not the general manager, but he was the owner, and he created that, and he put them back as America's team, because they were they were Landry's last year 1-15, and then
I was there.
1-15.
Terrible.
Yeah, it's awful. They had sunk to the depths. Jerry did raise them back. He's built a stadium, the first, not the first one, but the best of the modern stadiums, right? Like, he's done a lot to impact the league, both on and off the field. But the question that you're talking about, which is his legacy as a football man specifically, he has not achieved what he wants to achieve. Because I still remember sitting in his town car, years ago before Cowboy Stadium was built, and he talked about, being a young man and looking at the magazines about becoming a coach and wanting to get involved in it, like being the next, I know Barry Switzer was an assistant on their team when they were in college, and then
Yep. Arkansas.
he was reading about Bear Bryant, what it was like to be Bear Bryant, and then he goes, and I saw how much money they made. So that's not for me. And he wanted to make money too, right? He's big. He wanted to make hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, right? That was a higher priority than being a football man. But that doesn't mean that the dream of being a football man does not still exist in his head, and that he thinks he can do that, and that he wants to have that triumph. So yes, he still wants to have that triumph. He just chose to concentrate more of his life on the business side of everything he's ever done, whether that's oil, energy, whether that's football.
I'm going to ask you a couple mid-season questions here. I gave out some mid-season awards here, and I want to get your opinion on them here.
Mm-hmm.
You had to pick a coach of the year right now. The mid-season awards for the guy you think has done the best job of coaching in the league is who? I said Dan Campbell.
I was thinking that Dan's right there at the top. Sirianni would be there, because normally you have teams that lose the Super Bowl and they regress. Yep. And I had questions about Jalen Hurts, whether he would maintain consistency the second year. And he's still, look, he's not matching last year's totals, but he's still really damn good, right? And the whole team is really damn good. And I value that a lot. Shanahan for a while was right there. What was he doing? But, the 3-game losing streak makes that go backwards. I'm trying to think.
D'Amico Ryans in Houston.
It's a nice story. It's not quite there.
How about Steichen in Indy?
It's okay. Again, it's not quite there. To me, I go with Dan Campbell. Like, Dan Campbell has morphed into something more than the guy that we saw at the news conference with the bite your knees off kind of thing. That still exists. It's part of his repertoire, right? That toughness mentality, which it works because like Philadelphia, they're one of the few teams that's willing to be tough and grind out games, right? And play a different style than most teams play. They don't have quite the passing game to go with it. But I think they're making huge strides in progress. Like, last year was not a figment of our imagination. Last year was a real thing.
Who are you more surprised with the success that's having in the game right now, Campbell or Mike McDaniel down in Miami?
Probably McDaniel, because it's a bigger high wire act. What Campbell is doing,
more of an innovator too, no?
A little bit. I don't buy all the innovation stuff. Like all these passing concepts were written back in the 1950s. Okay, he's not redoing that. What he's done is he's taken a really high-powered speed team, but and put pressure on people, which is an amazing thing. The defense is not that good though, so and he's responsible for that, even though he's really calling plays. The thing that Mike McDaniel has done the best is turn around Tua. Like, he's turned a guy who was just getting hammered by Brian Flores, right? Like, just didn't trust the head coach. The head coach was testing. And, Brian Flores.
The head coach was fighting with Chris Greer the whole time of trying to make a trade to get a quarterback in there.
Yeah, and he didn't believe in Tua. Okay, well, what Mike McDaniel's had to go in there and do is say, no, you can play. You know how to play, and he's covered up the things that Tua is not as good at, highlighted the things that he is good at, right? And you all of a sudden and then seeing, okay, put stars around this guy. Like I remember when Flores was there before they took Jalen Waddle, and they took the kid from the pass rusher from and Waddle in the same draft.
Yeah, Phillips.
I was talking with one of their assistant coaches. And I said, go get 2 receivers, because it was a great year for receivers. I know the pass rusher is really good, but go get 2 guys who are weapons who make your quarterback better. Do what Indianapolis did with Peyton Manning for years and years and years. Give him weapons like Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Edgerrin James, Dallas Clark. Give a talented quarterback guys to make his life easier, right? And they did Jalen Waddle, but then they went with the defensive side. And then, Flores thing blows up. They bring in McDaniel, and then what's the thing that they do? They go and get Tyreek Hill. Because if you go get weapons for a quarterback who knows how to get rid of the ball quickly, if you create an offense that allows him to get rid of the ball quickly, you have something magical. And they do. Now, is it tough guy football? No. All right. They can get smoked by the Buffaloes and the Phillies. And if they don't get ahead of them, if they don't get on top of teams like that, it's tough for them. But they can win certain games and pound people out in certain games. And that makes them a contender.
MVP. Who would be the midseason MVP?
Oh, Tyreek Hill is up there.
You think AJ Brown's in there?
AJ Brown's in there.
Tua?
It's also, now I take Tyreek over Tua in that one.
How about Mahomes?
Mahomes is always in the discussion.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's like Gordon right now, right? He's always like Brady. He's always going to be in that.
Yeah, he's just always there, and you just figure out. AJ Brown, the guy who's really, if you're looking for somebody off the beaten path, it's TJ Watt. TJ Watt. TJ Watt. TJ Watt changes the game.
Over Myles Garrett?
For that particular team and what they do, I'm not talking about TJ Watt changes games for a team that otherwise can't. Like when you watch Pittsburgh on offense, it's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, I'm not
getting murdered.
Right, and he deserves it. But the combination routes, are just so like everybody lines
got
up.
A Penn Hills High School there.
It's really just such simplistic kind of stuff. Like they line a bunch formation on the right hand side, and 3 guys run straight lines. Like, okay, now I run a level coverage against you, and I take away one receiver after another. Right? This is not complex. You're not creating traffic for me, and all these other things that are really simple. Right? He just doesn't do it. And so, to me, for them to be competitive with the offense that they have, their defense has to be so good, so over the top good, that somehow they're going to win 4 games. Like somehow they're going to compete. And TJ Watt's the reason. Like their record with and without him is, I don't have it at my fingertips, but if you find it, it's just an extraordinary difference.
3 last questions for you here. Have you heard this conversation being brought up that at the end of the year, there's a potential that you could see Belichick moved in a trade to Washington, and Washington would send draft picks for Bill to coach the Washington Commanders? Someone told me this afternoon, and I'm like, nothing's out of the realm of possibility. He just signed an extension, but could you see them? It's a way for Kraft not to fire him, and move him out and give him an opportunity to do. I mean,
I think that it's really tough for Kraft to. Kraft already parted with one guy who was the best he ever had. at a position. And you can say whatever you want about Belichick, but he's a damn good coach.
He is.
Okay?
He's great.
He's a great coach, right? And I think it's really hard for him to walk away from. How's he going to break Shula's record? I think that's a really, really tough one to walk.
He needs 5 years.
No, he needs 2. He needs 2 really good years. Or two 9-win teams. What is he? He's 19 games.
He's at 319, and that thing's 340. That's you're a little bit away.
He's at 348. Yeah,
you're a little bit away.
No, he's got 20. I think he's at 329 because he's got 29.
Yeah, but you're counting postseason. He's looking at regular.
Yeah, because that's what I mean. That's what total wins is what.
Yeah.
If you're just talking total wins, if you're talking about regular season only, it's a different. It's way off, right?
He's a couple years off that mark from
off the regular season. But if you're just looking at total wins, it's 2 years. Okay.
Yeah, he's got like 35 wins in the postseason, so he's right there.
I think he's got 29 wins in the postseason, and Shula has 19.
Yeah,
because I've looked this up a bunch of times. So there's a 10-game gap that makes up the part of the difference on the postseason.
Yeah.
I just think that's a hard one to let go of. There's a reason he gave him a contract extension, and we can come up with you can come up with all sorts of crazy scenarios. But here's the other part of this. Belichick's 70 years old.
Yep.
Does he really want to move to Washington?
I think it has something to do with legacy and the fact.
Annapolis, he's near the
that, and also that's where Lombardi finished.
Yeah, but Lombardi was there for 1 year and
then passed away.
Right. I look. I don't think that Belichick gets misty-eyed about chasing people's legacies. Okay. I think he gets. He's intense about. I want to go get this, but I like my life the way it is, and I control my. And he's very much about I control my world. Right. Other people around me don't control my world. And I'm not going to do this unless, of course, Washington makes the offer and then says, okay, we're going to tear up your contract and pay you a truckload of cash.
Which is already the highest paid guy in the league.
Well, just make it more, right? Like here, and then make Steve even higher paid, right? Do stuff like that. Take care of your kid. Maybe something like that happens. But when these kind of crazy ideas come out, I just kind of look at it and go, some reporter out there has been thinking too much.
Put the Aaron Rodgers peyote down here. How about, let me ask you this last one here.
Mm-hmm.
Is Deshaun Watson's contract in Cleveland starting to become what many could consider the worst trade in the history of the NFL, even worse than the Vikings trade with Herschel Walker?
It's going to be hard to top the Herschel Walker trade.
I got 230 million reasons why, maybe not.
Yeah, but Herschel Walker trades.
I know it's built a dynasty.
That's a standard bearer, man. That's 3 Super Bowls, and money is money, but 3 Super Bowls is tough. I mean, it's going to be up there with one of them, but nothing's as lopsided as that one because and poor Ron Lynn, right? Was it Ron Lynn or Mike Lynn?
Yeah, and get this, Jimmy had a deal set up with Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
That he was going to make the deal, but then Lynn came in and offered more. And back then in the day, Jason, Jimmy, every single one of those players he traded for, he marched into his office and said, "You're never going to play it down in Dallas. I want the picks." They all translated into picks. Not one of those guys ever played for the Dallas Cowboys. They all turned, none of them.
Okay.
None of them.
I mean, look, that's an amazing trade. The thing that people forget about in that trade is how bad Herschel was in the Minnesota offense. Like this was a classic maneuver of you took a power back and put him in a finesse offense.
I was there when the trade went down. Jace, I was there when the trade went down. He was coming off a 1,500-yard plus year.
Good player. He's a really good player.
He was great.
Yeah. Herschel Walker, if not for the USFL.
Yes, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah, like like there's a scenario that he could have been a Hall of Famer, right?
Punt
And he kind of
returns, kickoff returns. He's over 10 grand. You got a conversation. People do
he's
have
a
a legit.
right. He's a magnificent player, and his legacy is sort of stained by this whole thing too, right?
Yeah.
But the biggest problem I always said is didn't the Vikings look at the tape and say, what kind of player are we getting for the kind of offense that we run? Like I just looked at it and said, and when he got there, and this is before I started covering the NFL, but I looked at it and said, wait a sec, what he does doesn't translate to what they do. And that is so much of what football is, and people don't get that. They think, oh, take this guy and put him in that offense and he'll be great. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to build an offense that caters to the talents of the players that you have, and they have to be the right mix and all those other things. There are very few players who can go play in any system. And the guys who can play in any system are usually guys on the edge or like corners because of their talent, or defensive ends, because they just have to go beat their guy one-on-one, right? That's a one-on-one matchup. In this case, they took a running back who was a power runner and put him on a finesse offense, and it was ghastly.
I'm going to leave you with this. So Jimmy was on, like I said, 2 days ago. You know what he said to me? He was offered by Norman Brayman the Philadelphia Eagle job in '86.
Yeah.
And Norman obviously still alive down in South Florida. And I asked him, and he said it's true. They offered him the job. He turned it down because Jerry was in the midst of trying to get the finances together to buy the team from Bum Bright. A couple of years later, he didn't have all the money together, but Jimmy held out because Jerry was going to buy a couple of years earlier the Chargers, and his dad talked him out of it. And he ended up buying the Cowboys, and that was the story.
Could you imagine Jerry in San Diego?
No, that's way too soft for him.
Could you he'd make
Kid Rock? Probably be arrested.
He would make Kid Rock blush.
Wait, Tijuana, L.A. No, I couldn't.
Just rocking it up and down the coast.
No
man.
way.
Could you imagine it? Could you imagine him? He would. God, it would be the greatest thing ever.
Where's Jerry for the Super Bowl? Oh, he's in Tijuana.
He'd be going all the way to Cabo, man.
Yeah. Jace, thank you, my friend. You're such a dear friend and a lifelong friend. Thank you, my friend. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, dude. We'll talk. See you.
You got it. Hall of Fame voter and our friend. We're going to take a quick time out. Keep it here on the National Football Show.
Football and Hooters, the perfect